Thomas of Norwich packed the last bale of wool onto the cart. It was late August 1297. The journey to the Stourbridge Fair would take him and his 2 hired men the better part of a week. They would travel south towards Cambridge to a place that for 1 month a year became the largest city in England. King John had granted the charter for this fair back in 1211. It gave the Leper Chapel of St. Mary Magdalene the right to hold a 3-day event. By Thomas's time, it had grown into something else entirely. It was a monster of commerce. Thomas was a wool merchant. His whole year revolved around this single event. He bought raw fleece from shepherds in Norfolk. His family and workers cleaned it, carded it, and prepared it for sale. But there were no buyers in Norwich who could take his entire stock. Not for the price he needed. For that, he had to go to Stourbridge. There, he would meet men from Flanders, from Ghent and Bruges. They had the looms and the skills to turn his wool into the finest cloth in Europe. They also had the silver. The journey was slow. The cart's wooden wheels groaned over the rutted tracks that passed for roads. They slept under the cart at night, 1 man always on watch for thieves. But the closer they got to Cambridge, the more crowded the road became. They joined a river of humanity. There were other merchants with carts of leather from Northampton or salt from the coast. There were farmers driving pigs. There were entertainers with dancing bears and men on stilts. Everyone was going to the same place. When they finally arrived, the fairground was already a sprawling city of wood and canvas. It was laid out in streets. And Thomas knew the way. He guided his cart towards the Duddery, the street for cloth and wool merchants. He passed Ironmonger's Row, where men sold Spanish iron and German steel. He saw the gleam of goods in Goldsmith's Row. There were timber merchants from Norway selling lumber for ships, and vintners from Gascony with barrels of wine. You could buy furs from Russia, spices from the Levant that had traveled overland for a year, and glass from Venice that seemed like magic. It was a whole world of goods gathered in one field for a few short weeks. Thomas found his designated spot. He paid his fee to the fair's organizers. Then he set up his stall. It was a simple wooden frame with a canvas roof. He cut open a bale of wool, its clean lanolin scent rising in the cool morning. Now he just had to wait. The Flemish buyers would make their rounds. They would inspect his wool. They would haggle over the price. This one sale would determine his family's fortune for the entire year. All his work, all his travel, all his risk came down to this. He was a specialized seller in a specialized location, meeting specialized buyers. It was the only way to do business on this scale. It was a temporary gathering that concentrated all the forces of international trade into one muddy field. It functioned exactly like a global trade show or a very, very large shopping mall. Number 10, they are both places you go to be seen. And Isabel pulled the linen coif tighter around her hair. It was June 1388. She and her father were at the Lendit Fair just outside the walls of Paris. Her father, Jean, was a mercer. He sold fine fabrics, ribbons, and other small, expensive things. Their stall was a modest one, but it was well placed near the parchment sellers and the scribes from the university. Isabel was supposed to be helping. She was supposed to be watching for cut purses and making change for customers. But she was mostly watching the people. The Lendit Fair was ancient. It had been going on for centuries. It was where the University of Paris bought its entire supply of parchment for the year. But for Isabel, who was 16, it was something else. It was the biggest social event of her year. She lived in a cramped house on a narrow street in Paris. She saw the same neighbors every day. She knew everyone on her street, and they all knew her. But here at the fair, the world came to Paris. And she watched a group of young men walk by. They were students from the university dressed in dark robes, laughing loudly. They weren't interested in her father's silk ribbons. They were looking at the girls who were looking at them. Isabel smoothed the front of her own gown. It was a deep blue wool, her best one. Her mother had spent weeks sewing it. Wearing it made her feel different, taller. More important, she knew other girls from her neighborhood were here too. They would be walking the rows, pretending to look at goods, but really looking at each other. They were seeing who had a new gown, who was wearing a more fashionable sleeve, whose coif was made of a finer linen. A noble lady and her attendants stopped at a nearby stall selling jewelry. The lady was dressed in fabrics so rich they seemed to drink the sunlight. Her gown was trimmed with fur, even though it was a warm day. Her attendants chattered behind her. Isabel stared, trying to memorize every detail of the lady's headdress. It was a tall, complicated thing with a fine veil. She knew she could never afford something like that. But seeing it gave her ideas. Maybe she could convince her mother to try a new way of folding her own veil. Her father grunted, busy with a customer haggling over the price of some velvet trim. Isabel turned her attention back to her duties for a moment. But then she saw Pierre. He was the son of a baker whose shop was 2 streets over from theirs. At home in Paris, she might see him coming and going from his father's shop, covered in flour. But here, he was clean, he was with his friends, he was wearing a new-looking tunic. He saw her, he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Isabel felt her face flush. She quickly looked down at the ribbons on the counter, pretending to be organizing them. The entire interaction took maybe 3 seconds, but it was the most exciting thing that had happened all day. This was the real business of the fair. For her, at least. It wasn't about parchment or wool or spices. It was about seeing and being seen. It was a stage. Everyone came here, put on their best clothes, and performed a version of themselves. You know, you showed off your family status with the quality of your gown, you made connections, you saw your rivals, you flirted, you gathered information. The commerce was just the excuse for the gathering. The human drama was the real event. Fast forward to a Saturday in November 2019. Kevin is 17. He is at the King of Prussia Mall just outside Philadelphia. He has $5 in his pocket. He has no intention of buying anything. He is not here to shop. He is here to be seen. He and his friends Matt and Chloe get dropped off by Matt's mom. They have a designated meeting point for pickup in 4 hours. The first thing they do is walk. They don't have a destination. They just walk the long, polished corridors of the mall. They start in the newer high-end section. They walk past the windows of Gucci and Louis Vuitton. They don't even slow down. This is just the cool part of the mall to be seen in. Kevin is intensely aware of what he is wearing. He has on his new Nike sneakers, the ones he saved up for 2 months to buy. He has on a specific brand of jeans, carefully chosen to be not too skinny and not too baggy. His hoodie is from a skate brand. It is an outfit that says he is part of a certain tribe. It is his 21st century version of Isabel's blue wool gown. It is a costume for the performance. They walk and they observe. They see other groups of teenagers doing the exact same thing. They nod at people they know from school. They analyze the outfits of others. Did you see what she was wearing? Chloe might whisper. Ho's shoes are so last year. The mall is a living catalog of what is in and what is out. Being here is a form of social education. Their first stop is the food court. Not because they are hungry, but because it is the central plaza. It is the heart of the social scene. They get a soda, making their $5 last. They grab a table that has a good view of the main pathways. From here, they can watch everyone come and go. It's like having a box seat at the theater. They talk, or they gossip, they stare at their phones, but mostly they watch. Kevin sees a girl from his English class, Sarah. She is with her friends. She is wearing a band t-shirt for a band he likes. She sees him. She smiles. It is not a nod. It is a full smile. It is the 21st century equivalent of Pierre's nod. Kevin feels a jolt. He and his friends talk about it for the next 10 minutes. Should he go over? What would he say? He decides against it. But the possibility hangs in the air, making the whole trip to the mall feel charged with importance. Later, they wander over to the part of the mall with the Apple Store and the video game shop. It is another social hub, a different one from the food court. Here, groups of guys are gathered, talking about games or the latest phone. It is another stage, another place to perform your identity. You demonstrate your knowledge. You belong to the group. For Kevin, just like for Isabel 631 years earlier, the shopping is secondary. The mall is a controlled, safe environment where you can practice being a person. You learn the codes of dress and behavior. You see your peers, you present yourself to the world. You hope that the right people will see you and that they will approve of what they see. The stores, with their bright lights and expensive goods, are just the backdrop. They are the excuse for the gathering. The real transaction is social. Number 9, you can buy things there you can't get anywhere else. Hugh wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of a dusty hand. The road from his small manor in Lincolnshire had been long. It was the summer of 1254. He was in Troyes, one of the great towns of the Champagne region of France, and he was on a mission. His lord, Sir Robert, was a man of simple tastes for the most part, but his wife, Lady Eleanor, was not. She had heard tales from a visiting cousin about the luxuries to be found in London and beyond. Now she wanted some for herself. Hugh was the manor's reeve. He managed the accounts. He knew every pig, every chicken, every bushel of wheat the manor produced. He knew its value down to the last farthing, and he knew that what Lady Eleanor wanted was an extravagance they could barely afford. But Sir Robert wanted to please his wife, so he had sent Hugh, his most trusted servant, to the great Champagne fairs. In his village, you could buy the basics. You could get rough spun wool from a neighbor or a new iron pot from the local blacksmith. A traveling peddler might come through once a season with needles or a bit of colored thread. That was it. For anything else, you had to travel, and for the things Lady Eleanor wanted, you had to travel here. The fairs of Champagne were the nexus point of European trade. Hugh carried a small, heavy pouch inside his tunic. It contained the manor's surplus profit from 2 years of selling wool. It was a small fortune. His shopping list was very specific. At first, pepper. Lady Eleanor wanted pepper to spice their bland diet of boiled meats and bread. In Lincolnshire, pepper was almost a myth. It was a black dust worth more than its weight in silver. It came from India, a place Hugh could not even picture. It traveled on ships to the Persian Gulf, then by camel caravan to the ports of the Levant. From there, Venetian or Genoese merchants brought it to Europe. And here in Troyes was where those Italian merchants met the buyers from the north. Second, he needed a bolt of silk. Not just any silk. It had to be a deep red, and it had to be patterned with small golden birds. Her cousin had described just such a fabric. It came from even farther away than the pepper. It came from China. It had traveled the Silk Road, a journey of thousands of miles, passing through dozens of hands before it reached a French fairground. To Hugh, it was as exotic as a dragon's scale. He found the section of the fair where the Italians had their stalls. It was a riot of color and noise. He heard languages he did not understand. He saw men with darker skin and different clothes. He felt like a simple country farmer in the court of a king. He found a merchant from Genoa who had a small chest of spices, and Hugh watched as the man used a tiny set of brass scales to weigh out a small pile of black peppercorns. The price was shocking. It took a quarter of all the money he had brought. The merchant sealed the pepper in a small waxed cloth pouch. Finding the silk was harder. He went from stall to stall, trying to describe the red fabric with the golden birds. Most merchants shrugged. They showed him blue damask from Lucca or purple velvet from Florence. These were beautiful, but they were not what Lady Eleanor wanted. Finally, an old merchant in a dusty tent beckoned him in. The man unrolled a bolt of cloth, and there it was. My red silk, so smooth it felt like water, and woven into it in threads of real gold were tiny, perfect birds. Hugh had never seen anything so beautiful. The price for the whole bolt was half of what he had left. He paid it. With the last of his money, he bought a small keg of wine from Gascony, a luxury for Sir Robert. His pouch was now light. His bags were heavy with goods that were impossible to find in his home county. He had traveled hundreds of miles for weeks to a specific place at a specific time to buy things that had traveled thousands of miles from the other side of the world. The fair was a portal. It was the only place a man like him could access the global economy of the 13th century. It is a Tuesday morning in April 2023. Maria is getting into her car in Laramie, Wyoming. She has a 4-hour drive ahead of her to Denver, Colorado. She is going to the Cherry Creek Shopping Center, and she's on a mission. Maria lives in a university town. As Laramie has grocery stores, it has a Walmart, it has a few downtown shops that sell clothes and books, but it does not have what Maria wants. She is a skincare fanatic. She follows influencers from South Korea and Japan. She reads reviews of products with very specific ingredients, and there is a particular brand of Japanese sunscreen with a formulation she has researched for months that she is desperate to try. You cannot buy it on Amazon. The company only sells through authorized high-end department stores in major cities. The closest one is in Denver. Her other goal is a new winter coat. She has lived in Wyoming for 10 years. She knows that a good coat is not a luxury, it is a piece of survival equipment. She is tired of the generic brands sold at the local sporting goods store. She has her heart set on a coat from a specific Swedish company known for its extreme weather gear. The coats are expensive. She would never buy one online without trying it on first. She needs to feel the material, see how it fits, check the pockets. The company has only a handful of its own stores in the United States. One of them is in the Cherry Creek Mall. The drive is long and boring. She listens to podcasts to pass the time. It feels like a pilgrimage. She is traveling a great distance, spending a whole day and a tank of gas to acquire specific rare items. For her, Laramie is her medieval village. It provides the basics, but the wider world of specialized goods is out of reach. The mall in Denver is her Champagne fair. When she arrives, she heads straight for the large department store. She finds the cosmetic section. It is a brightly lit world of glass counters and uniformed salespeople. It is the modern equivalent of the Italian merchant's stalls. She finds the counter for the Japanese brand. She talks to the saleswoman who knows all about the different formulations. Maria finally holds the bottle of sunscreen in her hand. It feels like a trophy. Next, she finds the store for the Swedish coat company. The store is designed to look like a minimalist mountain cabin. The coats are displayed like works of art. She spends an hour trying on different models. She talks to the salesman about temperature ratings and waterproof membranes. She finally chooses a deep blue parka. The price is shocking. It is a major purchase, the equivalent of Hugh's bolt of silk. But she knows it will last for years. It is an investment. She eats a quick lunch in the food court. She has no other reason to be at the mall. She has accomplished her mission. She has acquired the two items that were impossible to get where she lives. The mall, for her, was not a place for casual browsing. It was a destination. It was a centralized collection of specialty retailers, a physical portal to the global marketplace. She drove 4 hours to buy a coat from Sweden and sunscreen from Japan, all under one roof. She was a modern version of Hugh the Reeve, making a long journey to the one place that sold the treasures of a distant world. Number 8. The food court is the heart of the operation. Klaus wiped grease from his chin with the sleeve of his woolen tunic. He took a long drink of ale from a clay mug. It was September 1415. He was a merchant from Lübeck, a city in the Hanseatic League in northern Germany. He was at the Stourbridge Fair, and he was exhausted. He had been on his feet since dawn, arguing with English wool merchants. The haggling was endless. The language barrier was a constant struggle. His head ached. His feet hurt. He needed to sit down and have a hot meal. He had made his way to the part of the fair that everyone knew was for food and drink. It wasn't a single building. It was a sprawling, chaotic collection of tents, lean toasts, and open-air kitchens. No smoke from a dozen cooking fires filled the area. The sounds were of sizzling meat, shouting cooks, and laughing drinkers. Klaus found a place that was selling roasted chickens. A boy was turning a long spit over a fire pit, the chickens slowly browning and dripping fat. Klaus bought a whole one, along with a small loaf of dark bread. He found a spot on a rough wooden bench next to a man who looked like a French wine merchant and another who was clearly a local farmer. No one spoke. They just ate, united by a common hunger. This part of the fair was essential. Without it, the fair could not function. The thousands of merchants, buyers, laborers, and hangers on who crowded into this field for a month all needed to eat and drink. Commerce is hungry work. The food stalls were the fuel that kept the engine of the fair running, but it was more than just fuel. It was where the real business often happened, away from the formality of the stalls. After he finished his chicken, Klaus bought another mug of ale and looked around. He saw two Flemish cloth merchants he knew, deep in conversation with an English wool stapler. They were leaning over a small table, a half-empty jug of wine between them. A deal was being made. A handshake over a drink was often more binding than a written contract. He saw a group of sailors, probably from a Genoese ship docked at King's Lynn, laughing and gambling with dice. They were spending the money they had just been paid. He saw a man who looked like an official from the fair, the kind who settled disputes, sharing a meat pie with a merchant who was gesticulating wildly, clearly pleading a case. This was the social hub. It was the neutral ground. At your stall, you were a defender of your goods and your prices. Here, on a bench with a mug of ale, you were just a man. You could relax. You could observe your rivals. You could make friends. You could gather intelligence clouds. Listen to the conversations around him. He heard gossip about which ships had been lost to pirates, which lord was in financial trouble, and which towns had a surplus of grain this year. This was information that was just as valuable as the goods in his own stall. The food area was the great equalizer. Noblemen and cart drivers ate the same roasted chickens and drank the same ale. It was the messy human center of the vast impersonal machine of trade. Without these smoky tents and greasy benches, the whole enterprise would fall apart. It was the fair's heart, pumping life into every corner of the market. It is a Saturday afternoon in December 2021. The Chen family is at the Roosevelt Field Mall on Long Island. They have been shopping for 3 hours. David, the father, has been dragged through a department store looking for a new suit. And Helen, the mother, has been to 3 different shoe stores. The 2 kids, 8-year-old Maya and 11-year-old Leo, are at their breaking point. They are tired, they are bored, they're hungry. Leo has started to whine. Maya has declared she is never going shopping again. The entire expedition is on the verge of collapse. Food court, David says. It is not a question, it is a command. It is the only thing that can save the day. They take the escalator up to the 2nd level. The food court is a vast open space under a glass atrium. It is loud, it is crowded, and it is the mall's command center. It is the one place that solves the fundamental problem of any group of people. Everyone wants something different to eat. Leo makes a run for Sparrow. He wants a slice of pepperoni pizza. Maya wants chicken nuggets from Chick-fil-A. Helen says she's trying to be healthy and wants a salad from a place called Just Salad. David, who has given up on being healthy for the day, wants a cheesesteak. They split up. Each person goes to their chosen vendor. 10 minutes later, they reconvene at a small round table in the center of the chaos. It is a small island of family unity. The food arrives, the whining stops, the crisis is averted, the shopping trip can continue. The food court has done its job. It is the fuel station for the modern shopper. But just like at the Stourbridge Fair, it is more than that. David looks around while he eats his cheesesteak. He sees the entire ecosystem of the mall playing out before him. He sees a group of teenage girls not eating, but just occupying a table, scrolling on their phones and talking. It is their social clubhouse. He sees a young couple on what looks like a first date, awkwardly sharing a plate of fries. He sees a group of construction workers in dusty boots, taking their lunch break. He sees an elderly couple slowly eating ice cream cones, just watching the people go by. The food court is the mall's central plaza. It is the neutral ground. In the stores, you are a customer. You are being sold to. The interaction is transactional, but here you are just a person. You can sit for an hour with a single soda and no one will bother you. It is a public space, perhaps the most important public space in the whole building. It is also where business gets done. David sees 2 women in business suits with laptops open, having a meeting over coffee. The mall is their office. He sees a mother talking to a tutor who is helping her son with math. The food court is their classroom. The food court is the great equalizer. Everyone, from the teenager with $5 to the woman carrying a $1,000 handbag, ends up here. They all sit at the same plastic tables and eat off the same plastic trays. It breaks down the carefully constructed branding of the individual stores and brings everyone together in a shared, noisy, messy human experience. It is the heart of the mall. Without this central place for rest, refueling, and social interaction, the entire vast enterprise of the mall would feel sterile and exhausting. It would just be a collection of stores. The food court makes it a place for people. Number 7, they are a place for spectacle entertainment. Giles, the tumbler, tightened the rope between the 2 poles. It was a good pitch, right near the main thoroughfare of the Bartholomew Fair in London. The year was 1598. The fair was held in Smithfield, an area that was usually a livestock market, but for 2 weeks in late August it transformed into a carnival of wonders and chaos. And Giles was an entertainer. This was his livelihood. He didn't just tumble. He could juggle knives. He could eat fire. His daughter Agnes could walk the tightrope he was now securing. His youngest son could play the pipe and drum to draw a crowd. They were a family of performers, and the great fairs were their stage. People did not come to Bartholomew Fair just to buy cloth or horses. They came for the spectacle. They came to be amazed, to be shocked, to laugh, and to see things they would never see in their ordinary lives. The commerce was almost a sideshow to the entertainment. Once the rope was tight, Giles's son started a relentless thumping beat on his small drum. Giles himself, his face painted with a white paste, began to do a series of back handsprings. A crowd started to form. Farmers, apprentices, merchants, even a few well-dressed citizens, they were drawn by the noise and the movement. Giles's act was just one of 100 such spectacles at the fair. A few yards away, a man had a dancing bear. It was a sad, mangy creature, but it stood on its hind legs and shuffled in a circle when its owner played a tune on a flute. Further on, there was a puppet show where wooden figures of Noah and the devil acted out a body version of the Bible story. There were singers of ballads telling tales of famous murders and heroic battles. There were fortune tellers and astrologers. There was a man who had a pig that could supposedly count by stamping its hoof. The main attractions were the plays. Small acting troupes set up makeshift wooden stages and performed short, rowdy plays. They were full of sword fights, clowns, and devils. The famous playwright, Ben Jonson, would later write a whole play named after the fair, capturing its chaotic energy. For most of the people in the crowd, this was the only theater they would ever see. Giles and his family performed their show a dozen times a day. Agnes, small and fearless, walked the rope holding a long balancing pole. Giles juggled his knives, making the crowd gasp. They ended the show by eating fire, holding flaming torches to their mouths and extinguishing them with a puff of smoke. Then they would pass a hat through the crowd. A few coins would be thrown in. It was enough to buy food for the night and to pay the fee for their pitch at the fair. The fair was a sensory overload. The noise was constant, the drum beats, the shouts of the barkers, the roar of the crowds. It was a place where the normal rules of life were suspended. For a few pennies, you could escape your daily grind and enter a world of marvels and freaks, of cheap thrills and loud music. The buying and selling was important, but it was the entertainment that made the fair an event. It was what people would remember and talk about for months afterward. It is a Friday night in 2018. Jessica and Mark are taking their two kids, Emily and Ben, to the Palisades Center in West Nyack, New York. They are not going there to buy anything. They are going there to be entertained. The Palisades Center is a mall, but it is also an amusement park. It is a 4-story giant, one of the biggest in the country, and its owners know that in the age of online shopping, a mall cannot survive on retail alone. It has to offer an experience. It has to be a destination for spectacle. Their first stop is the Ferris wheel. It is a full-size, 68-foot-tall Ferris wheel right in the middle of the mall. The kids press their faces against the glass of the gondola as it rises, looking down at the shoppers in the food court below. From the top, they can see across the Hudson River. It is a bizarre and wonderful sight, an outdoor ride brought indoors. Next, they go to the ropes course. It is suspended high above the 4th floor, a web of cables, bridges, and zip lines. Ben, who is 10, clips into a safety harness and navigates the course, wobbling on a swinging log 30 feet above the floor. Shoppers below stop and point, watching the small figures scramble through the obstacles in the mall's ceiling. It is a public spectacle. The mall also has an ice rink, a bowling alley, and a comedy club. But the main event for the kids is the movie theater. It is a massive 21-screen multiplex. Tonight they are seeing the latest superhero movie. They get a giant tub of popcorn and settle into the reclining seats. For 2 hours, they are transported to another world, full of explosions and computer-generated monsters. It is the modern equivalent of the puppet show or the rowdy stage play at Bartholomew Fair. It is a story told with overwhelming sound and light. After the movie, they wander past the arcade. It is a cavern of flashing lights and electronic sounds. Teenagers are playing dance games, their bodies moving in sync with the figures on the screen. Others are shooting at digital zombies or racing virtual cars. It is a concentrated dose of cheap thrills, the 21st century version of the knife juggler or the fire eater. The mall is a carefully managed environment of entertainment. Every attraction is designed to keep people inside the building for as long as possible. The longer they stay, the more likely they are to spend money. But for Jessica and Mark's family, the spending is not the point. They are here for the experience. They could have bought a new pair of shoes online in 5 minutes. Instead, they drove 30 minutes to spend 4 hours at the mall. They came to be entertained. They came for the spectacle of a Ferris wheel inside a building. They came for the thrill of a ropes course in the ceiling. They came for the escape of a loud, bright movie. The mall, like the medieval fair, understands a fundamental human need. People crave novelty. They crave spectacle. They want to be taken out of their ordinary lives, even for just a few hours. The stores are just the supporting cast. The entertainment is the star of the show. Number 6, there is a special system of justice and security. Alaric the silversmith felt a surge of rage. The merchant from Cologne was a cheat. The scales he was using were weighted. Alaric had seen it. The man had a small lead weight stuck to the underside of the pan with a bit of wax. It was a common trick, but a bold one to try in broad daylight at the Great Fair of Frankfurt in 1342. Alaric had agreed to sell the merchant 3 silver buckles. They had haggled over the price, finally agreeing on a certain weight of silver coins in payment. Now, the merchant was weighing the coins, and his faulty scales were making the payment seem heavier than it was. He was trying to short Alaric by at least 10%. Alaric pointed a trembling finger at the scales. "You are a thief," he shouted in his best merchant German. The man from Cologne feigned outrage. A crowd began to gather. This was a common enough scene at any large fair. Where there was money, there were disputes. But a fair was not a lawless place. It couldn't be. For trade to happen, there had to be trust. Merchants would not travel for weeks with valuable goods if they thought they would be constantly cheated or robbed. And so the great fairs had their own system of law. It was swift, practical, and temporary, just like the fair itself. 2 men in leather jerkins carrying stout wooden clubs pushed through the crowd. They were the fair's guards, hired by the city to keep the peace. One of them listened to Alaric's accusation. The other listened to the merchant's angry denials. The guard did not make a judgment. He simply said, "Come," to the court. They were marched to a small tent set up near the center of the fairgrounds. This was the home of the court of pea powders. The name came from the French pieds poudres, or dusty feet. It was a court for the men with dusty feet, the traveling merchants who had no time for the slow, formal legal system of the city. Justice here had to be delivered on the spot. Inside the tent, a stern-faced man sat behind a simple wooden table. He was a local magistrate appointed to preside over the fair's court for its duration. The guards explained the situation. The magistrate listened patiently. He then had the merchant's scales brought before him. He examined them carefully. With a small knife, he scraped at the bottom of the pan and flicked off the hidden lead weight. The verdict was immediate. There was no long trial, no lawyers. The evidence was plain. The magistrate declared the merchant from Cologne guilty of fraud. The punishment was also immediate. The merchant was ordered to pay Alaric the full, correct amount for the buckles. In addition, he was fined a significant sum payable to the fair's organizers. His faulty scales were smashed with a hammer right there in the tent. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, a notice would be posted at the entrance to the fair naming him as a cheat. His reputation, the most valuable thing a merchant possessed, was ruined. He would find it hard to trade here again. The whole process took less than an hour. Alaric left the tent with his fair payment in his pocket. He was satisfied. The system had worked. It was a rough and ready justice, but it was effective. It allowed men from a dozen different lands, speaking a dozen different languages, to trade with a degree of confidence. The court of pea powders and the guards who enforced its rulings were the essential framework of law and order that made the entire chaotic fair possible. It is a Saturday afternoon in 2016 at the Aventura Mall in Florida. Maria is working her shift at a high-end handbag store. She sees a woman enter the store who looks nervous. The woman is carrying a very large, empty-looking tote bag. She avoids making eye contact with Maria. She drifts over to a display of expensive wallets. Maria has been trained for this. She knows the signs of a potential shoplifter. She keeps a close eye on the woman, but from a distance, pretending to be busy folding scarves. The woman picks up 2 wallets. She glances around the store. When she thinks no one is looking, she quickly drops them into her tote bag. Maria picks up the phone behind the counter and dials a 4-digit number. It is a direct line to mall security. She speaks quietly. This is Northstar name. We have a possible code 3. Female, brown hair, blue jacket, carrying a large black tote. She is heading towards the north exit. The woman walks briskly out of the store without paying. She has not been confronted by Maria. The store's policy is clear: do not engage. Do not risk a confrontation. Let the professionals handle it. The woman makes it about 50 feet down the mall's main corridor. Then, two figures step in front of her. They are not police officers. They are mall security guards. They wear professional uniforms, dark pants, a crisp white shirt with a mall security patch on the arm, and an earpiece. They are calm and polite but firm. "Ma'am, could we have a word with you for a moment?" one of them says. The mall is a private space. It has its own rules, its own security force, and its own system for dealing with problems. Just like the medieval fair, it is a commercial enterprise that cannot function without a baseline of order and safety. The shoppers, like the medieval merchants, need to feel secure. The security guards escort the woman to a small windowless office in a service corridor behind the storefronts. This is the mall security office, its version of the Court of Pea Powder's tent. It is a place the public never sees. Inside, they ask the woman to open her tote bag. The two wallets are there. The mall has a choice. They can call the local police and have the woman arrested for theft. This will involve paperwork, and a police officer will have to come and take a report. Or they can handle it internally. In this case, because the value of the items is below a certain threshold and the woman has no prior incidents at the mall, the security manager makes a decision. He issues the woman a trespass warning. She is not arrested, but she is photographed, her ID is scanned. She is entered into the mall's private security database. She is informed that she is banned from the Aventura Mall property for a period of 1 year. If she is caught on the premises again, she will be arrested immediately for trespassing. The store gets its merchandise back. The mall has removed a troublemaker without involving the slow, formal legal system. The woman is escorted off the property. The system is swift, practical, and designed primarily to protect the commercial environment. It is a private justice system for a private commercial world. The security guards are the modern equivalent of the fair's club carrying guards. The security office is the modern Court of Pea Powders. Both systems exist for the same reason: to create a predictable and safe environment where commerce can flourish. Number 5, different goods are sold in different designated areas. Brother Michael squinted at the list, written on the small piece of vellum. He was a monk from the Abbey of Bury, St. Edmunds, sent to the Stourbridge Fair in 1470 with a very long shopping list. The abbey was like a small town. It needed supplies of all kinds. It was his job as cellarer to procure them. And the fair, while vast and confusing, had a system. It had an order. It was organized. His first task was to buy iron. The abbey's blacksmith needed new bar stock to make nails, hinges, and plowshares for the coming year. Michael knew exactly where to go. He turned his small cart down a long, noisy lane known to everyone as Ironmonger's Row. You know, the air here was filled with the clang of hammers on anvils as smiths demonstrated the quality of their wares. Stacks of iron bars from Spain and piles of steel from Germany were laid out for inspection. Michael found the merchant the abbey always dealt with, a man from London, and began the long process of haggling over the price for 100 weight of iron. Next on his list was timber. The roof of the abbey's dormitory needed repairs. He needed well-seasoned oak beams. For that, he had to go to a different part of the fair. He led his cart to the area near the river, where the timber merchants from Norway and the Baltic had their yards. The huge logs and cut beams were too bulky to be sold in a small stall. Here, the space was open, and the smell was of pine resin and damp wood. After securing the timber, he needed books. The abbey's library was one of the finest in England, and the abbot was always eager for new texts. Michael headed for the section of the fair where the stationers and booksellers gathered. These stalls were quieter, more scholarly. He saw scribes selling beautifully illuminated manuscripts of the Gospels. He saw merchants with texts from the universities in Paris and Bologna. He found a bookseller from Bruges who had one of the newfangled printed books, a Bible made on one of those German presses. Michael looked at it with suspicion. The letters were too perfect, too uniform. It felt unnatural. He stuck to a hand-copied book of philosophy. His last major purchase was wine. The abbey needed a great deal of wine, both for the sacrament and for the monk's own table. He went to the Vintry, the area where the wine merchants from Gascony had their stalls. Barrels of red wine were stacked high. Merchants offered potential buyers small wooden cups to taste the vintage. Every part of the fair had its own character, its own population, its own smell and sound. The Duttery was for cloth, Goldsmith's Row for precious metals, the mercery for silks and fine goods. This zoning was not an accident. It was a highly organized system. It was practical. It allowed buyers like Brother Michael to find what they needed efficiently. It also allowed the guilds to regulate their members and to ensure quality. If you were a member of the Goldsmiths Guild, you set up your stall in Goldsmiths' Row. It was the rule. This organization turned a potential chaos of thousands of sellers into a logical, navigable city of commerce. It was a temporary physical search engine for goods. It is a Saturday in 2022. Frank and his daughter Sarah are at the Galleria in Houston, Texas. They have a shopping list. Sarah is heading off to college and she needs to furnish her dorm room. Okay, Frank says, looking at his phone. And first, a laptop. That means we need the Apple Store or the Microsoft Store. He knows exactly where to go. They head to the wing of the mall that is the unofficial electronics and technology hub. The Apple Store is bright white and minimalist, crowded with people testing out new phones. The Microsoft Store is nearby, as is a store that sells video games, and another that sells high-end headphones. They are all clustered together. Frank and Sarah spend an hour in the Apple Store, and Sarah picks out a new laptop. Next on the list, bedding. A comforter, sheets, and pillows. All right, Frank says, for that, we need to go to the department stores. They take an escalator to the other end of the mall to the anchor store corridor. Here, the giants like Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, and Macy's have their massive multi-story stores. These are the zones for home goods, clothing, and cosmetics. They go to Macy's and find the entire third floor is dedicated to home goods. There are aisles and aisles of bedding organized by brand and size. It is a city of linens. After buying the bedding, Sarah needs sneakers. She is a runner and is very particular about her shoes. They do not stay in the department store for this. They head to a different section of the mall, what Frank thinks of as the athleisure zone. Here, a Nike store, an Adidas store, a Lululemon, and a Foot Locker are all located within a few steps of each other. The stores compete, but their proximity also creates a destination. Anyone looking for athletic wear knows to come to this specific part of the mall. It concentrates the customer base. Finally, they are hungry. Food court or a sit-down place? Frank asks. The mall has both in separate designated areas. The food court is on the lower level, a collection of fast food counters. The restaurant row is on the upper level with sit-down restaurants like the Cheesecake Factory and a fancy steakhouse. They are two distinct zones for two different dining experiences. They choose the food court for speed. The modern shopping mall, just like the medieval fair, is a masterpiece of zoning. The layout is not random. It is a carefully planned landscape designed to guide consumer behavior and maximize efficiency. The high fashion luxury brands like Gucci and Chanel are clustered together in one glossy, quiet corridor. The teen-focused fast fashion stores like Zara and H&M are in another, louder, more crowded wing. The jewelry stores like the medieval goldsmiths are often found in a single glittering row known as the Diamond District of the mall. The zoning helps shoppers like Frank and Sarah navigate the vast space. It also helps the stores by creating synergistic districts that attract a target demographic. It turns the potentially overwhelming experience of hundreds of stores into a series of manageable, specialized neighborhoods. Like Brother Michael, Frank can go to the Ironmonger's Row for his electronics and the Vintry for his food, all under one climate-controlled roof. Number 4. They rely on a sophisticated system of credit and finance. Baldassar was a Florentine banker. The year was 1310. He was not at the Champagne fairs to buy wool or sell silk. He was there to sell money, or rather to manage it. His stall was nothing more than a simple wooden bench, a banco in his native Italian, from which the word bank would eventually derive. He had a heavy locked chest, a book for keeping ledgers, and a small set of scales for weighing coins. But his most important commodity was trust. A wool merchant from Ghent approached his bench. He had just sold his entire stock of fine Flemish cloth to a group of Italian merchants. He was now holding a large amount of silver coinage. It was dangerous to carry so much money on the long road back to Ghent. And robbers were a constant threat. The merchant from Ghent wanted to use Baldassarre's services. He handed over his bags of silver. Baldassarre counted it and weighed it. He wrote a careful entry in his ledger. Then he took a piece of parchment and wrote what was called a letter of credit. It was a simple note written in a special code addressed to his banking partner in Bruges. The note instructed the Bruges partner to pay the Ghent merchant the exact sum of silver, minus a small fee for the service. The merchant now had a small, light piece of paper instead of a heavy, dangerous bag of coins. He could travel home with much less fear. When he arrived, he would present the letter to the bank in Bruges and receive his money. It was a system based entirely on a network of trusted agents and the power of written records. A bit later, another man came to Baldassarre's bench. This man was a buyer, an agent for a French nobleman. He wanted to purchase a large quantity of English wool, but he did not have the cash on hand. He expected to be paid by his lord in a month's time. He asked Baldassarre for a loan. Baldassarre consulted a small book he kept. It contained information on the creditworthiness of various noble houses and merchants. He knew the French nobleman had a good reputation for paying his debts. He agreed to the loan. He gave the agent the silver coins needed to buy the wool. In return, the agent signed a bill of exchange. This was a formal IOU, a promise to repay the loan, with interest at a specific date. The interest was cleverly disguised as a fee for currency exchange to get around the church's rules against usury. Baldassarre's bench was a hub of financial activity. He was not just a moneylender, he was a currency exchanger, changing English silver pennies into French livres. He was a transmitter of funds, moving value across continents without moving metal. He was a credit provider, fueling the commerce of the fair by allowing buyers to purchase more than they could afford with the cash in their pockets. The entire fair, with its massive transactions, could not have functioned on simple barter or cash and carry. The sums were too large. The distance is too great. It required a sophisticated financial system operating in parallel to the trade in physical goods. Men like Baldassarre, with their benches and ledger books, were the essential lubricant that allowed the giant gears of international trade to turn smoothly. It is a Friday afternoon in 2024. Susan is at the Galleria Dallas. She is there to buy a new couch. She has been saving up, but the one she really wants, at a store like Pottery Barn, costs $3,000. She only has about $1,000 in checking account that she comfortably spends. She finds the perfect couch. It is exactly the right color and size. She talks to the salesperson. The price is firm at $2,999. Susan hesitates. She doesn't have the cash. The salesperson smiles. "That's no problem at all," she says. "We can open a Pottery Barn credit card for you today. You'll get 10% off your first purchase, and we offer 12 months of interest-free financing." This is the modern version of the loan from Baldassarre the banker. Susan is being offered credit, the ability to buy something now and pay for it later. She sits down at a small desk with the salesperson. She provides her personal information, her name, address, social security number, and income. The salesperson types this into a computer. The information is sent electronically to a bank, the one that underwrites the store's credit card. The bank's computer system instantly checks her credit history, a vast digital ledger of her past financial behavior. Within 90 seconds, a decision comes back. Approved. Susan is given a temporary credit card number. She buys the couch. The store gets its $2,999 immediately from the bank. Susan gets her couch. The bank now has a loan out to Susan, which she will pay back in monthly installments. If she fails to pay it off in 12 months, she will start to owe a high rate of interest. Right? After buying the couch, Susan realizes she is low on cash for the weekend. She walks down the hall of the mall and finds an ATM. It is a machine in a wall. She inserts a different piece of plastic, her debit card. She types in a secret code. The machine, which is connected via a secure network to her bank hundreds of miles away, dispenses $100 in cash. It is a small, automated version of the letter of credit. She has presented her credentials, and the system has given her the money she is owed from her account. The entire mall is built on a foundation of invisible financial systems. Very few people are paying for large purchases with actual stacks of cash. They are using credit cards, debit cards, and digital payment apps on their phones. Each transaction is a complex financial event, a message sent from the store's terminal through a payment processor to a bank, which then verifies the funds or the line of credit and sends a confirmation back, all in the space of a few seconds. The mall, like the medieval fair, could not function at its current scale without this sophisticated layer of finance. The ability to access credit encourages people to buy things they cannot immediately afford, fueling the entire retail economy. The ability to move money electronically and securely makes large transactions simple and safe. The store's credit offer and the ATM in the hall are the direct descendants of Baldesaire's bench. They're the financial lubricant that keeps the modern engine of commerce running. Number 3, it is a place to learn the news and the latest trends. William Caxton wiped ink from his fingers. It was 1476. He had recently returned to England from Bruges and set up a new printing press near Westminster Abbey. He decided to take a stall at the Bartholomew Fair in London to sell some of his printed books and to see what people were talking about. The fair was the best place in the city to take the pulse of the nation. People from all over the country and even from overseas came to the fair. They brought with them more than just goods to sell. They brought news. Caxton stood at his stall, which held a few copies of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales that he had printed, and he listened. He heard 2 wool merchants from the Cotswolds talking about the health of the king, Edward IV. One had heard a rumor that the king was ill. The other swore he had seen the king hunting just a week before, and he looked fine. This was vital information. The stability of the entire kingdom depended on the king's health. He talked to a sea captain who had just arrived from Bristol. The captain spoke of new voyages setting out to the west, looking for new fishing grounds, or perhaps even a new route to the Spice Islands. He talked of strange new maps being drawn. This was news of a changing world. A priest from Kent complained to Caxton about the sermons of a radical preacher who was gaining followers in his region. He was telling people they did not need priests to talk to God. This was news of social and religious unrest. But it was not just political and economic news that circulated. The fair was also the center of fashion and culture. Sir Caxton watched the clothes people were wearing. He saw that the young men of London were wearing shoes with ridiculously long, pointed toes called cracows. The sleeves on the gowns of the wealthy women seemed to be getting wider and more elaborate. He saw a juggler using a new kind of playing card with different symbols than the ones he was used to. A ballad singer was drawing a huge crowd by singing a song about a recent scandalous affair at court. It was a new tune. By the end of the fair, people from all over England would have heard it and would take it back to their villages. It would become a viral hit of the 15th century. For Caxton, the fair was a living newspaper. It was where you learned what was really happening, what people were thinking, and what was becoming popular. The information he gathered here was almost as valuable as the money he made selling his books. It told him what people wanted to read. It helped him understand the mood of the country. In an age before mass media, the great fairs were the most effective way to spread information across a wide population. They were the social media of their time. It is a Saturday afternoon in 2023. Amy is 16. She is at the Americana at Brand, an outdoor mall in Glendale, California. She is not here to buy anything in particular. She is here to absorb information. She is here to see what is new. She walks into a Zara. The store is packed. The music is loud. She does not look at the price tags. She is looking at the styles. She sees that all the jeans on the mannequins are a wider, baggier cut. The skinny jeans she has been wearing for years are nowhere to be seen. She sees a lot of clothes in a bright green color. She makes a mental note: baggy jeans in green are in. This is real-time trend forecasting. She and her friends get a coffee and sit on a bench near the central fountain. They are not just talking to each other. They are watching everyone who walks by. They are a panel of judges, silently observing the fashion choices of hundreds of strangers. They see a girl walk by with a particular style of handbag. "Oh, everyone has that bag now," Amy's friend says. It is a piece of data. The bag's popularity is peaking. The mall itself is a source of information. In the center of the common area, there is a new electric car on a raised platform. It is a promotion. People are gathered around it, looking at the futuristic design. Amy has no interest in cars, but she absorbs the fact that this brand is making a big marketing push. It is an advertisement, not on a screen, but in the physical world. They wander into a Sephora. The store is a laboratory of beauty trends. Amy sees a display for a new brand of clean makeup made with all natural ingredients. An employee is showing a customer how to do a graphic eyeliner look a bold, artistic style she has seen on TikTok. The store is not just selling products. It is teaching techniques. It is broadcasting what is considered beautiful and fashionable right now. Later, as they are leaving, they walk past the movie theater. The posters outside are for the big blockbuster films coming out in the next few months. This is cultural news. It tells them what stories the culture is going to be talking about, which characters will be on lunchboxes and t-shirts. For Amy, the mall is a physical internet. It is a stream of real-time data about trends, fashion, and culture. She is not consciously thinking about it this way. She is just hanging out. But she is conducting a form of market research. She is learning the unspoken rules of what is cool. She is seeing what corporations are trying to sell, and she is seeing what her peers are actually buying. In a world where so much information comes through a screen, the mall provides a different kind of data. It is tangible. It is three-dimensional. It tells you not just what is being advertised, but what is being adopted in the real world. Like William Caxton at the Bartholomew Fair, Amy is taking the pulse of her society. She is learning the news not about kings and politics, but about the equally important matters of style, trends, and social currency. Number 2, it is a special destination that requires a journey. Finian stretched his aching back. He was a stonemason from a small village in County Clare, Ireland. The year was 1171. He and a dozen other men from his village were on a pilgrimage, but their destination was not a holy shrine. It was the Donnybrook Fair near Dublin. The journey had taken them over 2 weeks, mostly on foot. They were not merchants. They had nothing to sell. They were going to the fair because it was the most important event of the year. It was a tradition that went back generations. For 50 weeks of the year, their lives were a repeating cycle of hard work, church on Sunday, and the changing of the seasons. Their world was their village and the few miles around it. The fair was the one time they left that world behind. The journey itself was part of the experience. They walked along ancient tracks, sleeping in monasteries or the, barns of friendly farmers. They told stories as they walked. They saw parts of their own country they'd never seen before. They saw castles and large towns that made their own village look like a hamlet. The journey was a slow decompression from their normal lives and a building of anticipation for what lay ahead. When they arrived, the fair was a mind-boggling spectacle. There were thousands of people. There were horse races, which were the main official business of the fair. But there was also drinking, gambling, fighting, and music. It was a chaotic, often violent, but intensely alive place. And Finian and his friends were not there to buy anything. They had saved up a few coins over the year, and they would spend it all on ale and food. They would watch the horse races. They would listen to the musicians. They would get into at least one fight, a tradition of the Donnybrook Fair, which was notorious for its brawls. This trip was their vacation. It was their pilgrimage. It was their one great adventure for the year. The very act of traveling to the fair set it apart from ordinary life. It was a destination. You had to make an effort to get there. And because it took so much effort, the experience itself was more intense, more memorable. It was a story they would tell for the rest of the year until it was time to make the journey again. The difficulty of the journey amplified the power of the destination. It is a summer morning in 2012. The Thompson family is in their minivan on the highway in northern Minnesota. They have been driving for 2 hours. They live in a small town near the Canadian border. In the back of the van, the two kids are asking for the 10th time, "Are we there yet?" Their destination is the Mall of America in Bloomington, a suburb of Minneapolis. For the Thompson family, this is their annual summer vacation. It is a 5-hour drive each way. They will stay in a hotel near the mall for 2 nights. The trip has been planned for months. They are not going to the mall to do their regular shopping. They can buy groceries and clothes in their hometown. They are going to the Mall of America because it is not just a mall. It is a destination. It is a place you have to travel to. The journey is part of the ritual. They pack the car the night before. They get up early. They stop at the same gas station for snacks every year. The long drive through the flat green landscape of Minnesota builds a sense of anticipation. It is a pilgrimage to a temple of commerce and entertainment. The massive, sprawling complex of the mall finally appears on the horizon. The kids cheer. They have arrived. For the next 2 days, they will live inside this self-contained world. They are not just there to shop. They are there for the experience that can only be had at this specific destination. Their first stop is Nickelodeon Universe, the full-size amusement park in the center of the mall. They ride roller coasters that weave through the support columns of the building. They ride a log flume that splashes water just a few feet away from shoppers. The next day, they go to the Sea Life Minnesota Aquarium, which is on the lower level of the mall. They walk through a clear tunnel as sharks and stingrays swim over their heads. They have traveled from the north woods of Minnesota to stand at the bottom of a tropical ocean, all without ever leaving the building. They do some shopping, of course. They go to stores that do not exist in their small town, like the Lego store, which has giant life-size sculptures made of Lego bricks. But the shopping is part of the entertainment, not a chore. For the Thompson family, this trip is a special event, set apart from their normal lives. The long drive is a crucial part of it. It marks the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary. They could have ordered things from the Lego website. They could have watched a video about sharks on YouTube. But it would not have been the same. The effort of the journey makes the destination more valuable. The Mall of America, like the Donnybrook Fair, is a place you go to, not just a place you are at. It requires planning, travel, and expense. And because of that, it becomes a major event, a landmark in the family's year, and a source of memories that last long after they have made the 5-hour drive back home. Number one, they are the original home of the pop-up shop. Bertrand was a gingerbread maker. He was known in his home city of Nuremberg for having the best Lebkuchen in the city. But his main income for the year came from 1 month of work. Every December, he would pack up his spices, his molds, and his family and travel to the Christkindlesmarkt, the great Christmas market of Nuremberg. The year was 1650. The market took over the main square in front of the cathedral. For 11 months of the year, it was an open plaza. But for the 4 weeks of Advent, it became a temporary village of wooden stalls, all decorated with pine branches and lights. And Bertrand's stall was always in the same location. He paid a hefty fee to the city for the right to be there. He built his stall from pre-cut pieces of wood he stored all year. It was a temporary structure built to last for just 1 month. Once the market was over, he would take it down and put it away until the next year. He was a specialist. He only sold gingerbread. The stall next to him sold only hand-carved wooden toys. Another sold only spiced mulled wine. The market was a collection of these temporary specialized businesses. They appeared for a short, intense period of high demand, and then they vanished. The Christmas market was a pop-up event on a grand scale. It was tied to a specific season. No one wanted to buy gingerbread and mulled wine in July. But in the cold of a German December, it was exactly what people wanted. The temporary nature of the market created a sense of urgency and excitement. You had to go now, before it was gone. Bertrand and his family worked from dawn until late at night for the entire month. The demand was huge. People from all over the region came to the market to buy gifts and soak up the festive atmosphere. At the end of the month, Bertrand would have earned enough money to support his family for most of the coming year. Then, on Christmas Eve, the market would close. Within a few days, all the stalls would be gone. The square would be empty and swept clean. It was as if the magical village had never been there. Bertrand's business, for all its intensity, was ephemeral. It was a pop-up shop designed to capitalize on a specific season in a specific location for a limited time only. It is November 2019, a large empty storefront in the middle of the Soho shopping district in New York City is being transformed. For the past month, it was empty. Now, a team of workers is busy installing displays, painting walls, and setting up cash registers. The sign in the window announces the grand opening of the Netflix Christmas Movie Castle. This is a pop-up shop of Netflix, a company that exists primarily online, has rented this expensive retail space for just 6 weeks from, mid-November until the end of December. The store does not sell a wide range of merchandise. It is a highly specialized, temporary themed experience. The inside is decorated to look like the set of one of the cheesy but popular Christmas movies that Netflix produces. There are fake snow, Christmas trees, and actors dressed as princes and plucky small-town bakers. The store sells a limited range of merchandise related to these movies, branded hot chocolate, ugly Christmas sweaters, and gingerbread house kits. But the main purpose of the store is not to sell things. It is to create an experience. It is an advertisement you can walk through. People come to take selfies in the royal throne room or at the cookie decorating station. They post these pictures on Instagram. The pop-up shop becomes a marketing event, generating online buzz that is far more valuable than the sale of a few sweaters. The store is a seasonal phenomenon. Its entire concept is tied to the Christmas holiday season. On January 1st, it will be gone. The workers will come back, strip the store bare, and it will once again be an empty storefront waiting for the next temporary tenant. This pop-up model is a direct descendant of Bertrand's gingerbread stall. It is a temporary business set up to capitalize on a specific moment in time. Just like the Christmas market, the pop-up shop's temporary nature creates a sense of urgency. It is an exclusive event. Get it before it's gone. It also allows for specialization. A permanent store needs to have a broad enough appeal to pay rent 12 months a year. A pop-up can be incredibly niche. It can be a store that only sells one brand of hot sauce for a month. It can be a museum of ice cream that exists for one summer. Both the medieval market stall and the modern pop-up shop are solutions to the same economic puzzle. They are a way to match a specialized product with a concentrated period of consumer demand without the cost and commitment of a permanent physical location. Or they are a fleeting, ephemeral form of commerce that creates excitement and novelty, proving that the basic principles of retail have not changed as much in 370 years as we might think.